Howdy, Immortalium here, and today I'm doing a complete series review of Eyes, basically from volume 1 to 15. Now, Eyes. Before I start discussing the series itself, I better explain how I came about finding out about this series and why I ended up buying it. Basically, I really enjoy shoujo romance manga, but it is basically relegated to just that demographic, shoujo. In all other demographics, basically romance is like a secondary storyline, which something else coming to the forefront. Which is why I was quite interested when I heard that Eyes was a romance manga, but it was also published in Weekly Shonen Jump. It was a shonen manga. So I was thinking to myself, oh, I'd like to see a shonen interpretation of romance. That, and it's gotten very positive reviews. It's got a very devoted fan base, etc., etc. Now, my opinion on this series. Well, before I talk about the opinion, let me just give you a bit of a summary. So, what is the story about? Well, we are introduced to our lead character, Ichitaka. And Ichitaka confides in his friend Teratani. He's in love with a girl called Iori. Iori recently, appeared in a magazine in, a bikini shots. Which, has made Ichitaka feel even more inferior to her. That all the guys in school now are, madly, want to date her. And, Ichitaka feels, inferior to doing that. Now, however, their teacher puts Iori and Ichitaka into a committee in order to do a presentation for the new students. And that's where the series begins, basically, which, Ichitaka and Iori having to work together. Now, from a storytelling perspective, there's a lot of pieces that come into play. One thing that I liked about the series was the fact that the only opinion that we are given quite often is Ichitaka's. We are, allowed to visit his mind to see what he's thinking. And quite often throughout the series, he acts differently to how he thinks, but we're not allowed that convenience with other characters. So we only know who Iori is from how she acts. We only know who, Teratani is from how he acts, etc., etc. So we're kind of wondering throughout, what are their feelings on certain matters, etc., etc. Are they like Ichitaka? Are they acting differently to how they think, etc., etc. That was a nice little storytelling device, but what a storytelling problem for me was the fact that the majority of this manga, particularly heavy in about the first 2/3 of this series, is the fact that the whole series is based on misinterpretation and miscommunication. What I mean by that is basically, okay, let me just give you an example. So this is in a later volume. There's a bit where Ichitaka is trying to confess his love to Iori. They've just come out from hearing about ghost stories and all that. And Ichitaka, says, listen to me, I have something important to tell you. And he tries confessing his love. Iori, though, she's covering her ears. She's saying, please stop, and she runs away. And of course, Ichitaka feels quite depressed about that. But it turns out that Iori simply thought that Ichitaka was, going to be telling her a scary story, which to me seems quite moronic. There was, as far as I could tell, there was no way that she could possibly mishear or misunderstand what he was saying into a scary story. So I just found that really artificial, really kind of uncomfortable. Now, there is some better miscommunications, but the point is that the majority of the series is based around that. And if characters simply manage to successfully communicate with each other, just like in the majority of other manga series, then, the series would be over a lot faster. Which I guess would be the problem. Now, another storytelling device that I'm not really that keen on, because it feels so superfluous. The thing is, this series isn't just a romance, it's also a comedy. Now, I feel that the romance is far more dominant in this series than the comedy. The comedy is just there to kind of break up tension quite often. I wouldn't say that the comedy is anything, major in it. But my problem with one particular device he uses for this comedy is the fact that Ichitaka quite often, starts daydreaming. And now, the way that most other manga works is that when a page turns black for the background, that means that it's in a flashback, that the characters are thinking back on the past. And that's a way to indicate that it is a flashback. With eyes, that black page actually means that Ichitaka's daydreaming, that he's imagining something's happening, from the situation that he is in. And it's usually, far more steamy, we could say, than what it actually will turn out to be. But I think that's a bit of a problem with when characters begin to daydream and most other stuff. I think part of the comedy and part of the drama, etc., is the fact that we are unaware that it is a daydream. We're kind of wondering to ourselves, is this really happening? And then it's the surprise of finding out that it was actually just a daydream that makes it funny or makes it shocking, etc., etc. So I think actually indicating to us that it is a daydream does take some of the impact out of it. Now, to discuss Katsura's art, he clearly knows that he is a better artist than a storyteller. His extras are illustration galleries. So basically, at the end of each volume, you have some shots, or just some drawings that he did of characters, which are very lovely, detailed. Now, for the rest of the series, the artwork is very pleasant. It's very detailed. It's he uses a good bit of negative spacing, but he knows when to use it. He usually just uses it for smaller panels where it's less noticeable. And then for the bigger panels, he uses very detailed backgrounds, which are lush and very pleasant to look at. And the character designs are very well drawn as well. So I really do like his artwork. Now, from his paneling, though, on the other hand, is a bit iffy. The majority of his panels are simply squares or rectangles. They're in the first chapter, where most manga artists do experiment a bit with paneling. There is some nice use of diagonals, but for the majority of the series, it's simply the squares or rectangles built into this kind of rectangular overall structure for the page. So every panel fits into this very specific pattern that's created. So it's very rigid, very artificial from that perspective. Now, that's not to say there's no diagonals at all, but I'd say throughout the entire 15 volumes, excluding the first chapter, I would say that there's probably only maybe 10, 20 pages where there's diagonals, and the rest are just squares and rectangles. Another thing I have to point out, I can pretty much say without a doubt that I've never seen double boom pages used so frequently as in Eyes. Now, if you're not aware what a boom page is basically where one page is an entire picture. So like one panel for an entire page. A double boom page, as you can imagine, is where two pages are used for one picture. And I remember that I was reading one of the volumes, and I think the double boom page was used over about 10 times, which was pretty crazy to me. So I've never seen it used so frequently. Now, the appealing artwork does make it very appealing to see these double boom pages, but I kind of wonder sometimes how effective they are at telling the story. So I don't know. As a panelist, he's quite questionable in talent, but as an artist, I do highly respect him. He is a very good artist. Now, Viz's treatment of this series, I mentioned in the video that I got this, that there was censorship, and the censorship isn't actually as heavy as I expected it to be. When I heard that, the first time I ever heard about the fact that this series was censored was on Anime News Network, and I think they put it under something called censorship fails, and he showed us the first censorship that Viz did in this series. And it is very clumsily handled, which is this picture right here. Now, in the actual manga itself, particularly from how the characters are speaking, you know, the stars isn't there, and as your man put it out on Anime News Network, it's you know, it's almost like looking at a porno film, you know, like that the characters would have the stars over the nipples or something. But it is more effectively done in later volumes. I can remember, like, I think that's the only point where I would have actually known it was there. There is stars in Volume 3, but it was stars in the original Japanese version, and the characters even comment that it is stars. So, that's fine. And then I can remember there was a spa scene later in the manga, and they used the clouds to cover them, which, you know, it was uncensored in the original Japanese, so I can understand why people would freak out about, you know, it being censored in the Western release. But I don't really think it takes away anything. You know, it's not vital story information or something. So, and then actually after a while, I think it was it volume 10 onwards, it's completely uncensored. You see, you know, the nipples and everything. So I don't really think the censorship really takes it away anything. It's only that first awkward censorship, and then from then on, it's just, you know, it's kind of relatively well handled. So overall, what did I think of Eyes? It's a fine series. I mean, it was nice to see, you know, a romance where the lead character was a male. How it, you know, males like have to, you know, struggle with certain, you know, aspects of romance, etc., etc. But overall, it's not the best romance series I've read. It's an okay series. It's a good series. I've read worse romance, but it isn't as big or as great as many other people make it out to be. Now, do I still recommend you get it? Yeah, it's a shonen romance. It's probably, from what I've heard, it's one of the better done shonen romances. So, you know, I would recommend it. But most of it is out of print, so you will find it a bit awkward to get unless you can find it like I did on eBay. Or maybe Amazon Marketplace. I remember Archangel Manga saying he found it for relatively cheap on Amazon. So, overall, yeah, I recommend it. Just don't go in expecting, you know, something amazing. Just look at it as a different interpretation of a genre. So that's my review of Eyes. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and bye-bye.